started. So we have a full time for the keynote address, and we can then head out to dinner. I'm sure everyone's anxious to get some more food. So I am so thrilled and honored to introduce my colleague, Robin D.G. Kelley, who I have the honor of teaching with at UCLA. But first I wanted to join in the acknowledgement of Tara and to joy my freedom. I was thinking about the first time I ever emailed Tara today as I was thinking about the day's events, and I remember I did not want to do it. I felt like I should, that I didn't want to send her an email introducing myself because you know, when you meet your idols, things can only go downhill from there, right? Only go wrong. So I never wanted to do it, and I was looking back on that, the first email I sent to her when I was a postdoc at Princeton in 2010, and I looked at the date, and it was 9/16/2010, which is my birthday, and I realized that I sent it to Tara for good luck. Maybe things won't go too terribly wrong if I send this on my actual birthday. And I was so nervous because to join my freedom meant absolutely everything to me as I was writing my dissertation. I don't think there is a page of that dissertation that I wrote without to join my freedom being on the desk. It provided a new way of thinking about Black women's history, and I'll just read a quote that reminds me, that really resonates for me from the book. Talking about Black working class women in dance, Tara says, their defiance exhibited more than creative release. The substance, style, and form of Black vernacular dancing were profound expressions of a cultural aesthetic grounded in an emerging musical form, the blues. And the thing about that is that Tara traces all of these political maneuvers into Joy My Freedom, and it is precisely this innovation in style, form, and substance that To Joy My Freedom enacts. And I think for me, that is because it is this profound and deep work of Black feminist theory that stretches over chapters rather than sentences or paragraphs, but provides a model of what it means to do Black feminist theory in the form of history. And in the this form, style, and substance, To Joy issued a demand for a genre of work in which the measure of methodological success was one's accountability to Black working class women's consciousness, vulnerability, desires, and imagination. And so I really just wanted to acknowledge that it is, in many ways, I think that To Joy My Freedom enacts a profoundly new method, and it is a method of saying Black women's history challenges all other sort of social history methods by transforming the way we think about social change, transforming the way we think about political and historical change through the intersection of race, gender, and class. And there's no work that I think has been more important to my generation of Black women historians, and no work that has taught us more about method and what it means to be accountable and in fact loyal to the subjects of your work. So thank you for that. All right. Robin Kelley is the Gary D. Nash Professor of U.S. History at UCLA. No. It's going to be quick, I promise. His books include Thelonious Monk, The Life and Times of American Original, Africa Speaks, America Answers, Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination, Hammer and Poe, Race Rebels, and Your Mom is DisFunktional, and I can go on, but much like Professor Hunter, he is humble and therefore finds introductions excruciating. I wrote that before you did that. And I know he really wants to have his full time to honor Tara, so please help me welcome one of her most important intellectual comrades, Rodney.
Okay, so thank you so much. I beg Sarah for a short introduction because I know time is short, the day is long, you're probably all tired, and I've been sitting back there, very quiet, trying to jot down some notes, thinking about what I'm going to say. But I just have to begin by saying I'm honored and humbled to be here. I wouldn't miss this event for the world, even though I'm sick right now, having an infection, and I'm struggling, but if I'm under the weather, I'm going to get through this. And I hopefully, by the time I finish, you'll understand why this event is more important than anything I think I've done in 25 years for me. Sarah is a very special person, and so I really appreciate, Sarah and Erica, Justine, and Jennifer for having the foresight to put this together. I felt the same way, in fact, recently when we honored Eula Taylor at Sala, because really it's important to honor our intellectual giants while they're still here. And I have to say, just a side note, I've been doing this a while, and I've been doing a lot of these talks about people who are not here. I gave Stephanie Camp one. I gave the Gerald Gill, and these are people who are friends of mine. Gerald was one of my mentors. Rod Bush, they had passed. So we need, I know Tara resisted this, but she needs to hear from all of us, and we all need to hear from each other. Secondly, it's especially fitting to be introduced by Sarah Haley. For obvious reasons, we're friends, we're colleagues. She invited me to give this keynote. I realized I'm the only dude speaking. That's cool. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is because when I actually read Sarah's book manuscript, which was then titled Engendering Captivity, it literally sent chills down my spine. And I would read it, and then I would stop, and I'd daydream about the women whose lives she described so vividly, whose lives were constrained, and what they did. And then I daydreamed about the impact the book would have. I said, oh, yeah, think about all the prizes it's going to win, right? And it was very exciting to me that she was my colleague. But then I realized the last time I actually felt that way about a book was when I read Tara Hunter's dissertation 28 years ago. And it was, back then it was titled Household Workers in the Making, Afro-American Women in Atlanta in the New South, 1861 and 1920. So in both instances, remembering reading Tara's dissertation and reading Sarah's book, I said I couldn't contain my excitement. And it may seem weird to some of you who are like of a younger crowd, but I remember reading Tara's in a native manuscript, thinking like she's our E.P. Thompson of our generation. Now somebody's like, that white man. Well, I'm sorry, I was trained where E.P. Thompson really transformed the field of history. And that's what I read in her work. So don't take it the wrong way. I know someone's going to tweet something about, oh, Robin Kelley's crazy white dude. No. This is about how important and transformative her work was. Now, in fact, thinking about it now, I can imagine how Sarah might have felt reading To Join My Freedom for the first time. I'm sort of doing speculative thinking here. Like when she got to page 67 and read about black women being arrested for minor crimes, assigned a convict release system, and later the chain gang, and Talitha as well. I could imagine what that meant. Or the profound moment on page 98 when Tara writes, modernity and Jim Crow grew to maturity together in the New South. African-American women's lives and labor were severely circumscribed by the harsh consequences of this pairing. So just imagine what it meant to read the book manuscript later, after she had added so much, especially on music, dance, and expressive culture. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. By the way, this is my blurb on the book, so I don't need to repeat that, so you know what I think about the book. And I'm just going to leave that up there for a second and say a couple other things. So I know that we're here to celebrate Tara's extraordinary scholarship, partly to raise a glass to the publication of Bound in Wedlock, which is a remarkable book. And hopefully, sometime in the near future, we could sort of celebrate The Making of a People, the book that Tara and I have been working on since the 90s. Soon. We'll get to it. But for our purposes today, I'm only going to talk about To Join My Freedom with a special emphasis on its genesis, its immediate impact, and It's author. Okay, and by the way, don't let her leave. If she starts getting up to go, stop her. Okay? You can't go. Because it's author who, for the last 28 years, has been my intellectual model and one of my favorite people in the world. And this is something very special for me, celebrating this book here in Charlottesville at the Woodson Institute, because it was here, this is the scene of the crime, as Deborah McDowell knows. It was both at the Woodson Institute and at her flat at 108 Clark Court, Apartment 3, where she wrote much of the dissertation. And this is where I met Tara for the first time, here. And so let me just show you a picture. Okay, now I didn't cut Julius out. But in fact, let me just do this so you can really see. I talked to, there, okay. This is basically where, this is about the time I met Tara. And some of you recognize Julius Scott, the great historian. They knew each other at the time. And it was Julius who basically hit me to this amazing young scholar from Yale who was writing about Black domestic workers. So, picture this. It's 1989. And my wife Deirdre at the time, and I drove to Charlottesville from Chapel Hill. I was at Chapel Hill at UNC doing a postdoc. And we were going to a conference on the roles of women in civil rights struggles that basically ran from the end of May to early June. And it was a great conference. I mean, I met Gloria Richardson there. By the way, it's so funny when people say a long time ago, 2004. Please. That's not a long time ago. This is 1989, you know. I was about to be some public enemy there. Anyway, so I met Gloria Richardson, Sally Belfridge, Victoria Gray, and Braden, Virginia Durr was there. It was a great conference, and Deborah, I think Francine, were you at that conference?
I'm sorry? No,
sorry,
I was not.
Yeah, I know Deborah was definitely there, because one of the things that happened was a consequential meeting to meet Tara for the first time, and it happened to coincide with her birthday. You know, her birthday is May 30th. And it was Deborah who threw a party for Tara. And I'll spare you the details, but first of all, meeting Tara was like meeting a friend from a previous life. I was awestruck by her brilliance and the ease with which she spoke about her work and ideas, her humility, her enthusiasm for the women she wrote about, and what she was finding in the archives and her words. But the best part was the birthday party, I have to say. That was a straight up dance party. Some of you may not know about those kinds of things, but back in the 80s, they had dance parties. And I remember I spent most of the night dancing with Deirdre, but I also got down with Tara for a few cuts. And I didn't have to drag her to the dance floor. She was ready to carouse the night away. And just so you know, she didn't do the buzzard lope. She didn't do the fishtail or the funky butt. But she handled her business, the wop, cabbage, all that stuff. Now, I don't have a picture. I don't have a picture of Tara at that party. Right? But I do have this picture at my wedding. Tara had to do the electric slide at my wedding, 2009. By the way, the one in the front is my daughter, Eliza, who at the time wasn't even conceived. She'd be conceived like in a couple months later. So they're doing the electric slide. And so you see, Tara could get down. In any case, this was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. We exchanged essays and ideas. She shared drafts of her dissertation with me. My book, Hammer and Hoe, was sort of in press at the time, but her ideas forced me to change some things, which is why she's acknowledged in the book. And then we began a kind of intermittent correspondence. I immediately bombarded her with letters. And in fact, I wrote this long, I don't know if you remember this letter I wrote, it was like a 7-page single-spaced letter after she had written a response to Trey Ellis's article in Callaloo on the New Black Aesthetic. And some of you may remember that a long time ago. And I just hated that article. It just was the dumbest thing. And so Tara wrote this astounding, stunning critique of it. And I was so happy that I wrote this long article and I just let everything out. It was kind of a screed, thanking her for it. And then I actually went back to think, well, what does this correspondence look like? So I went to my files and looked at some of my letters from 89 to 93. And by the way, in those days you wrote letters, so actual letters that you write and you send. And Tara actually didn't write me that many letters in those days. And so what I had to do, ultimately, was read all these files of letters from 89 to 93, which was traumatizing for me because it was mostly rejection letters. Like all the articles that got rejected and presses and things like that, and critiques from various people. So thank you for that. So in any case, I also found vibrant correspondence with lots of people, part of our community in those days, like Elsa Barkley Brown, Stephanie Shaw, Mel Painter, and I used to write back and forth all the time, and all kinds of juicy gossip. So when I'm dead, those files will be really, really interesting. But that's the story. So this may be where and when I entered, but I was late. Because we need to understand Tara Hunter's journey to that moment. So, who is Tara Wanda Hunter? She was born in Miami, Florida on May 30th, 1960, raised by her mother, Anew Harper Hunter, and her father, Willie J. Hunter. When I think about her parents, I think about the beautiful film, Nothing But a Man, starring Abby Lincoln and Ivy Dixon, and that her mother was a school teacher in Dade County, where she taught at Miami Edison Senior High School, and her father was a longshoreman who began working on the docks in 1959, the year before Tara was born, and rose to the ranks to become vice president, and I believe president at some point of the International Longshoremen's Association Local 1416. They were married 47 years. And sadly, Tara's mother passed in 2007, the same year that my father-in-law passed. And she's pictured here with her siblings, Alaric and Teresa. So by the way, I should say ahead of time that I enlisted the help of many people who love you, besides Sarah and the conference organizers like Etta Fields Black, who's back there, who helped me find Jeremy Jackson, Garrett Griffin, Ann Twain Hunter helped me out. Many thanks to Ann Twain, who happened to be at your father's house, who shared some things. So again, you can't leave yet. And of course, I got wonderful pictures, as you'll see in a second. So Tara was clearly beautiful and bright and talented, and she could have been anything. She could have done anything, and I'm telling you, I know that for a fact. I've seen her do everything. For example, she could have been Serena. She could have been Serena. I mean, she could have been the greatest living tennis player on earth. And she does have a reputation as a great tennis player. In fact, she schooled me. I remember one day she said, stop standing in no man's land. Don't stand there. You need to go back or go to the net. But she was great, and little known fact, she's also the academic athletic fellow with the women's tennis team at Princeton. I know that. So this is your tennis club. They were really overzealous with the pictures, so I got to show you some of them. And so this is Tara, who is continuing to pursue this, though, again, she could have been the greatest. Okay? See? So Serena's lucky. She would have been the pro. Now, Tara, you can imagine Tara Hunter, the dancer, the singer. Had she followed this path, who knows? Janet Jackson would have been following her footsteps. like Janet Jackson's like Tara Hunter, But she chose to do that. Well, there's also like the dreamy actor who, you know, had she pursued this path, we wouldn't be talking about Alfred Woodard or Halle Berry or Lisa Gay Hamilton. Lisa Gay Hamilton would be out of work. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Lisa, I'm married to Lisa Gay Hamilton. So that could, or the playwright, you know, the novelist. It's not too late, though, by the way, to be the playwright novelist, but she will be. But she chose a different path. Instead, she attended Miami Edison Senior High School, where her mother taught, and her family attended Mount Zion Baptist Church in Overtown, where Willie J. was deacon. Instead, she went to Duke University, and she chose to be a historian, which, thank goodness for the rest of us, that's what she chose to do. And to live the life of the archive. It's important to note, though, and I really want to emphasize this, and in fact, I think Francine might have said something to this effect, but it's important to note that she didn't take it for granted that because she lived a life in a working class black family with black people, that somehow that was enough. That was enough of insight. That somehow experience was the thing that she needed, and everything else. She took it for granted that she needed to sort of study the archive and do the work. And in fact, she was relentless about standards of historical research and the seriousness with which we deal with this knowledge. And she was also very fearless as a young person. One of her first published pieces, incidentally, was in the New York Times as a letter in 1985, which I think is hilarious, given for reasons that we'll talk about in a second. But imagine how fearless she is to take on the fact that Gloria Naylor and Toni Morrison are writing reviews of history books by black women when we should have black historians writing those reviews. She's like, what do they know about history? I think that's so hilarious. So in any case, we'll come back to this. She wanted to write about the people she knew, and she wanted to write about ordinary black people, but and how extraordinary they were. But as she testified in college, she talked about this morning, in college she was frustrated by the lack of sources on working class women. She talked about writing a thesis on Charlotte Hawkins Brown. And in fact, she writes this beautiful essay called Writing of Labor and Love, Gendered in African American Histories, Challenge to Present-Day Assumptions and Misinterpretations, which is in a special issue of Souls that Sarah Dale Gore and Prudence Cumberbatch edited. Because I really would direct you to that. But let me quickly move on because time is short. So I want to talk in terms to the context in which she wrote her dissertation, which of course becomes To Join My Freedom. The context is very, very important. And I'm glad that Francine is here representing the Association of Black Women's Historians, because there was a revolution taking place in the early 90s, a real revolt. And Leslie probably remembers that. And some of you of the earlier generation knows this. And that revolt centered on studies of U.S. history, on the Southern history, on labor history, and what was then being called the Iron Triangle of race, class, and gender. They called it Iron Triangle. The word intersectionality was being used, but it was often seen not as fluid, but as sort of these three different dimensions. So it was black women historians who are at the forefront of this transformation, or I should say challenge, since it took a while for the guild to follow. You remember that. And so it was, again, the Association of Black Women's Historians that played this critical role. Besides Tara, also Barclay Brown, whose name's been raised a few times, was a real significant mover, and Francine, and Stephanie Shaw, and Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, and Darlene Clark Hine, Eula Taylor, Nell Painter, Deborah Gray White, Tiffany Patterson, Barbara Ransby, and other generations who were very much there. Rosalind Turbo Penn, Sharon Harley. There's a very, very long list. And there were other women historians, feminist historians, who were wrestling with these questions, who were not part of that circle, but nevertheless significant, like Jacqueline Dowd Hall and Nancy Hewitt, and Dolores Janevsky, Dana Frank, Evelyn O'Connell Glenn, and Lois Humboldt, whose work seems to have disappeared, though her work is very, very important. Now, scholarship by these women challenged both the so-called New Labor history and race relations scholarship. And sometimes it's very frustrating how much of the work that they were doing and many of us were doing kind of fell through the cracks of these subfields. And I don't want to go into a lot of details on this, but I remember some of the most intense battles. And I remember Tara was at this conference we were all at. It was for C. Van Woodward. Remember that conference? And Howard Rabinowitz was getting all angry because all these upstart scholars of color were talking about gender and race and that sort of thing. And he was like, I'm right, my book is right, you all need to shut up. And they felt really challenged by that. And I remember that so vividly because what he and others had to face was what it meant for Black women scholars to assert Black women as a central dynamic and disrupt the race relations narrative. Not only it's not just about introducing gender and class, that wasn't in race. It was about rethinking the very nature of power. And here, To Join My Freedom was exemplary. The fact that the journal Labor History had a symposium devoted to Join My Freedom in 1998 was a real breakthrough. And in fact, one of the participants of that symposium, Dave Roediger, I thought summed it up really well when he noted, quote, no one could use this book to relaunch sterile debates over whether race is more important than class or gender. It signals the utter transcendence of such debates and doesn't even much bother to note they're exhausted. I mean, that was a turning point. And I know for a lot of younger scholars, you take that for granted. That was hard fought. That was hard fought. You could just see it turn on a pivot like that. Side note, though, this is where I go back to that interesting letter to the New York Times, is that Roediger also noted, he pointed to fiction writers, suggesting that Herman Melville and Toni Morrison had succeeded in grappling with the simultaneity of race, class, and gender. And then he goes on to say, it is, quote, desirable to think about how literary works might inspire historians to operate on various levels at once. And he compares Tara's own masterful storytelling with Mark Twain and Sterling Brown, suggesting that this is why her book is so strikingly successful. And so, once again, Roediger and others acknowledging that what she accomplished is more than just a kind of archival discovery and the location and reconfiguration of power relationships through the study of these Black women, but it was a literary feat. It was a beautiful, amazing narrative that we can learn from. And so I go back to that letter because I feel like in some ways it was a kind of reconciliation with those novelists, you know? So on the one hand, it is true that there are people who are not necessarily prepared to review the work. On the other hand, maybe there's something to say about a deeper engagement conversation between literature and history, and Tara's work really embodies that. Anyway, what links, I think, To Join My Freedom to these texts, in part, is her concern with the internal life of Black women domestics, Black women household workers, which is to say that the dialectics of maids and madams is not the only relationship at play. And all the participants in the symposium, I think, make really important contributions. Dana Frank, Evelyn O'Connell Glenn, Sharon Harley, Lawrence Sabine, and Roediger. But I want to point to something that Dana Frank says in this Labor History Symposium. Because she recognizes right away what Saidiya Hartman, Scenes of Subjection, sought to demonstrate, which also came out the same year as Tara's book. And that is that once we center the story of Black women, the central story on Black women, the context of slavery doesn't disappear post-emancipation. It comes back. That these women were formerly enslaved or a generation out of slavery, toiling in a world where whites were, quote, constantly maneuvering to re-enslave them. But as Frank also recognizes, the book's very title speaks to a refusal to be slaves. And see, this is to me, and I'm gonna get myself in trouble for this, but this to me is a very important lesson for the way people read Afro-pessimism. I think it's a critique of Afro-pessimism, because the whole book is about a refusal to be slaves, a claim to freedom that had to be fought for and defended each and every day. Quitting was an assertion of freedom. Living at home was an assertion of freedom. And so was dancing and cutting up on Decatur Street, attending church and the hard-fought customary rites, to pan-toting, to borrow clients' garments, that sort of thing. What Tara shows so clearly is that these black women had some handle on the levers of power, that even these quotidian struggles disrupted the smooth running of Jim Crow capitalism. And this, again, I just happen to teach, I still teach your book all the time, so I have this graduate course, and I taught To Draw My Freedom, and then Sarah's book followed, and then Clyde Wood's Development Arrested will be on Tuesday. And it's interesting because I have students who are convinced that there's no distinction between the condition of slavery and post-slavery. They confuse the idea of the afterlife of slavery with actual slavery. Right. And so when I said there's freedom, they said, no, there's no freedom. And so they read your book, and it messed their minds up in a good way, because they were convinced that there's no such thing as freedom, and that they, I said, so all of you sitting around this class today are basically slaves. Well, yes, not the white people. I'm like, okay, well, that's what I'm dealing with. And so it's very interesting to me as a reminder, because looking at those quotidian struggles and see in the role that they play in disrupting the ability of the state and of Jim Crow capitalism to function. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's a victory. It means that hegemony is hard work. And in fact, let me just say one more thing. Incidentally, I was an anonymous reader for that essay that Lisa Levinson mentioned, Domination and Resistance. And you know that, I think I sent you that thing. And went back to our readers' report. And of course, I praised the piece, had a few suggestions for revisions. But one of the things that I took away, I realized when I went back and looked at the report, was just how much Tara's work revealed the tenuousness of white supremacy and its Jim Crow capitalist order. Let me just repeat that. How it revealed the tenuousness of white supremacy and Jim Crow capitalist order. In other words, it was always teetering. It doesn't mean that it collapsed. It meant that it always had to shore itself up. And that these black working class women exercised power and deployed it strategically when they could. So the washerwoman strike is the obvious example, but what she shows in that book is that they remade the city. They recognized how dependent both the white elites and the white working class homes were on black female labor. And this is why I wrote in my report, Hunter has successfully reinterpreted the public transcript of New South rhetoric, public health concerns, and patriotic pro-war propaganda to locate a hidden and at times not so hidden transcript of domination and control over black female labor. Her work constitutes a wonderful example of what Stuart Hall means when he says hegemonizing is hard work. This afternoon, we heard from so many people about the impact of the book, the transformative power of her arguments and insights. And I don't want to repeat that here. I don't want to repeat what's been said. I do want to end by just focusing on one thing in particular, and that is Tara's contribution to understanding the blues and dance cultures in the early 20th century, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not just a historical intervention, it's a theoretical one. So I see her actually anticipating some of the rich insights of Clyde Woods, whose book, Development Arrested, came out the following year, 1998. And in fact, recently on a panel devoted to Clyde's work at the ASA, at the American Studies Association, and I know Sarah was there, Ruth Wilson Gilmore remarked that blues ontology comes closer to describing what Woods was really trying to do more than blues epistemology, because it's kind of akin to Cedric Robinson's observation that the core of the Black rap tradition is, quote, the shared sense of obligation to preserve the collective being, the ontological totality. So, rereading chapter 8 To Joy My Freedom, and it's actually throughout the book, to be honest, I can see how Tara is really talking about the blues ontology. They call it a blues aesthetic, but I would argue it's also a blues ontology. I mean, she's building on some of the initial insights from there, Neil and Dwight Andrews, and she offers, I think, one of the most startlingly original meditations on how a kind of blues being shaped everyday life, sociology, and a political imagination rooted in a notion of freedom as constant struggle. Freedom is constantly tenuous, and like dance itself, expressions of, quote, irreverence, transcendence, social realism, self-empowerment, and collective individualism. And this blues ontology is fundamentally at odds with racial and gendered capitalism. On page 185, she writes, okay, an object of discipline and liberation, the body is a site where a society's ideas about race, class, gender, and sexuality are constructed to give the appearance of being mandates of nature while actually conforming to cultural ideology. The body is the vehicle through which labor produces wealth. The importance of laboring bodies in the political economy is revealed, however, in the obsession of employers to repress and contain the autonomy of workers in order to reap the maximum benefits of their exertion. The mere sight of African Americans, especially domestic workers, deriving pleasure and expression, symbolic liberation in dance halls by posing alternative meanings of body exertion seemed threatening to employers. And by the way, I just want to also emphasize that she makes this argument not just for secular music, she makes it for sacred. And for some reason, when people always like quote and cite you, they always emphasize the dance halls and the blues spaces, but not the sacred spaces that you spend just as much time focusing on. And I think that's really important, that she talks about how this blues ontology in some ways, you know, extends to the ring shout, to the prayer meetings, where dance and ecstatic expressions of bodily freedom are just as central. And it's too bad that Sean Cawley left. But Sean's work on Pentecostalism in some ways is an extension of that ecstatic expression and that fleshiness. Anyway, I have much to say. I can go on forever. No, I can't. But let me just end here. By the way, that's the younger version of the other one who was doing the electric slide. And I just love this picture, by the way. This is in Turkey. And by the way, Tara has this amazing ability to find us wherever we are, wherever my various families are, in different parts of the world, and come visit. England, Istanbul. We spent some really good times in Vermont, or Hanover, I should say. All kinds of stuff like that. So I love this picture because she's my family. And let me just say more. I could say much more, but I'll say this. For the last 28 years, I have been privileged to know and learn from you, Tara. And I continue to learn from you. You've been my teacher, my role model, my collaborator, my critic, my therapist. You've seen me through 2 different marriages. So I you took some of that stuff from your book, Unbound Wedlock, I'm sure. And you've been my sister and my dear, dear friend. And you have, all of you in this room today, have confirmed what we all know, that her generosity is boundless, her mind is capacious, her taste is exquisite. And by the way, you're just like the best house guest of all time. So I want to close with actually the last paragraph of that long, massive letter I sent you on June 9th, 1989. And it's going to sound kind of strange, but in some ways it speaks to the core beginnings of our friendship and what it meant to me and what it still means to me. So I wrote, I'll stop. This is after like 7 pages, single space. Don't worry, it will be a while before you get a letter like this from me. Also, realize how much I like and respect you. I'm grateful to you for hanging out with me in Virginia and hope we can maintain some kind of friendship. I appreciated your company and conversation more than you'll ever know. See, my class-conscious and feminist friends don't like to talk about race. My race friends tend to be anti-feminist and anti-Marxist, and my friends who are sensitive to all aren't down to earth. They speak in convoluted tongues and are always trying to deconstruct them. I get the impression that you're different, and difference is everything. Yours, Rodney. If there's a question to be had, I'll take it. I mean, it's more eyewitness.
I don't have a question. I just want to say what a wonderful way to end, because I think the whole couple of days has been about not just the scholarship, but the ways in which these networks of friends and colleagues, and I feel like we just had this really important kind of sacred moment in a really difficult time. And I really appreciate how you ended it, and it's just really beautiful. So thank you, Tara, for giving us this opportunity. I don't know if we look at
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and to reiterate my great good fortune over the course of my career to be included among historians. I feel always that I am an interloper because I'm not a historian, but you have all those that I've known over the years, Francine, Tara, and others. You've always embraced me, even though I'm not a member of the guild. So I want to thank you all for that.
Yes, you are. Any questions about that time? For those of you who might have not been? Yeah, oh, Francine, well, you were there. So.
I have a minor correction,
Yes.
which is that Nancy Hewitt has always been a member of ABW.
Okay.
So, you know,
I wasn't
who's in and who's out.
Yeah, I wasn't actually. It wasn't clear. I wasn't distinguishing those who are members and not members. I was distinguishing between black women and the women who are not black through the network.
Okay.
I just mentioned that it just so happened that that the Association of Black Women Historians is one of the key organizations, but specific names. I just wanted to make that clear. But yes, you're right. You're right. Absolutely.
But and that was the minor correction, but I think that I love your talk. I love all your talks. And I do think it's really important for succeeding generations to understand how radical the shift was.
Right.
And I remember there was, I forget the exact title, the Jim Crow conference that was at Durham, and
right.
you and Elsa and other people gave these amazing talks that were work in progress. And one of the more senior black historians got up and said, "I'm so glad I have tenure, because history is never going to be the same. I'm glad I wrote my descriptive book." Because, I mean, literally, I'm not going to call his name out.
I remember that.
It was a moment where you felt like we could really do this. Because before you couldn't really do that when and where I enter. Where did we enter? You know, like you couldn't, the ways that you had, the theories and methods did not allow black women to speak. And, you know, your work on the women that were resisting on the buses in Birmingham, and Elsa's work easily.
Right.
There was resistance, and Howard Rabinowitz was at the center of it, but there were a lot of resistance. There was continuing people saying they don't really do history.
Right.
And all of the people that we know, Painter, Darlene, all of those people were singled out as not really doing history and were critiqued when they started doing women's history because both of them didn't start, they were writing more political histories. And that was a serious critique that we don't really acknowledge, that there was a big resistance. And so thank you for reminding us that that was a struggle.
Right. Yeah, I just would to add to that, that's so true. And that's, I have horror stories. When I started teaching at NYU, how I know some of these would say this is kind of amazing, but I was assigned to teach the sort of U.S. History graduate course for first-year students. And I assigned Del Painter's book, Standing at Armageddon, which is U.S. history since 1877. And I was at a faculty meeting, and a whole bunch of people at the faculty meeting says, she's not a historian, and this is not U.S. history. This is unacceptable. As if somehow I'm being disciplined, and I'm a full professor. Yeah, I'm a full professor, and I'm being disciplined. Columbia University, we had a history department when I had to go into anthropology because I wasn't a real historian. And I would assign all this work, and I remember both the graduate students and some of the faculty constant pushback. So that's why I said 1998 is very, very significant because it was a decade of the 1990s struggle. And terror was right there in the middle of it. And just the fact, I think your book was the first book on Black women ever to have a symposium in labor history. I think that's right. And that term, it didn't turn entirely, it's still a struggle, but it made possible all the work that people are doing now, So I can go on, but yes, it was a real struggle.
Yes, just another observation. I think it helps to be reminded that whatever Black people are doing, whatever Black intellectuals are doing within the arena of academia, that we can all chart a history of resistance. Think about the responses to Patricia Williams. Well, what she's doing, what people doing critical race theory are doing, that is not, that doesn't rise to the standards of what we expect of whatever it happens to be. Fill in the blank. If you're in literary studies, what you're teaching is not literature. It's politics, right? And when the turn to theory comes, what you who are lately admitted into such bastions of white privilege, University of Virginia, insert your school, you don't do theory, you do politics. And so there are always these invidious distinctions being made that are highly racialized and gendered, and that we can slice the historical timeline wherever we want, and we will find reinforcement of that reality.
Right. I think that's true. Oh, yeah.
Hey, well, these NYU are still interesting.
Yes. remember those days.
It's a long time. Well, I think what Professor McDowell just said is that things are different than when I entered graduate school at Northwestern in 1990 in certain regards. And in other regards, it's really distressing how little has changed in terms of U.S. history, how white it still is. At NYU, in terms of diversifying the program, as soon as the color comes to Diaspora, Latin America, U.S. not so much. And so in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, in terms of class, we still have a lot of work to do. And it's just, I don't know what your take is in terms of this person who's now in the White Office, in the White House. But it's just incredibly distressing. It just seems like as people who are on the left in the academy need to mobilize in some sort of meaningful way. Because it's not only what's happening in the academy, it's what's happening in our country.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's been happening for a long time, consistently. You know, I don't want to get too much into this, but I don't know to what degree Obama's election was a radical shift in the trend, because some things continue. But we could see that the last 40 years or so, a kind of a disavow of all these transformative movements that have tried so hard to democratize the country. Sometimes using unfortunate terms like diversity, but really it's much deeper than that people have been doing, and I think the pushback is enormous. You know, one of the things I really appreciated about that generation of historical transformation, I remember when you and I met, you were looking at graduate school, that's how young it was. You know, it's like, you go way back. Minka, same thing, you know, you go way back. To those days in the 1990s where there was a lot of excitement, but it was very clear that either you're going to do it at the margins of a mainstream department, or you're going to do it in American Studies or Black Studies or something like that. Or if you do, you have to sort of compromise around certain things. So yes, I think we've moved a lot, and it's very hard for kind of my generation of graduate students who I'm dealing with right now. I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of them actually really do believe that the academy is this kind of safe space that they can basically do whatever they want to do, and they're thinking in terms of the long run, like what they're thinking about their job prospects, rather than just the work. And I understand that, you know. But I want to go back to something that Deborah said before, which is very, very important in the previous panel. And this is sort of indirectly related. There is a kind of inward turning blogosphere kind of mentality that has made it difficult for there to be more collective work, collective writing, collective critique. And one of the things that was striking to me was going through all that correspondence and seeing like how direct and harsh my dear friends were in terms of their criticism of my work. I mean, if I showed you some criticism, you'd be like, what? And how come you're not traumatized by that? Because it's not about trauma, it's about love. And all these people with the level of rigor and care read the work real carefully and really would not allow me to put out stuff that would be embarrassing. Sometimes when I kind of level that same kind of critique, it's not for everyone. Some students feel like their feelings are hurt and they're like, well, why would you say that? And you know, I'm so confident in my work that I don't really need your critique. As opposed to saying, I'm so confident in my work, I need your critique. The confidence comes from actually embracing as opposed to, you know, and so I do think that we have to continue to train our students, need to be rigorous, to do the work that Tara's been doing this whole time, because in the end, I'm not saying Du Bois was right in that, you know, knowledge and truth wins, but we can't be in a situation where we're ill-prepared without an analysis. And part of what we're missing right now is an analysis of the current conjunction, a deep analysis, not a short-term, because it's so easy to write a blog or post an article and to state the obvious. It's stating what's not obvious. And that, again, just to turn to the final word, to Join My Freedom, this is about what's not obvious.
Right.
This is about finding like one letter, and from that letter digging underneath to see the dynamics that are rendered invisible purposely. And we have to be able to see the dynamics that are rendered invisible purposely right now, and recognize that what we see as this lost cause is maybe the eve of a collapse of U.S. empire, and certain possibilities that are right in front of us. Unless we don't have the right analysis, we don't know what to do. So this is a crisis that could be turned into an opportunity, and it's one in which the configurations of sexuality and gender and class and race really do matter. because they're not the same. They're not fixed. They keep shifting and changing. That's what all the scholarship is about. What we understand to be race, class, gender, sexuality in 1890 is not 1990, which is not 2017. And so understanding those configurations is also really important in terms of the work we have to do. So we have to be rigorous, we have to do the scholarship, and I think, again, Tara's most recent book is a model of that because the policy implications are deep, the analysis is deep, and I just hope that we can continue to build on the amazing, beautiful work that you have done. And so thank you so much again.
So very quickly, I know that the hour is late. We just wanted to take a moment to offer some brief closing remarks. And I must say that even though it's a pleasure to be able to do this, I feel quite humbled to be following Robin Kelley and the brilliance and love that's been articulated here today and then also yesterday. So I think what I'll do very briefly is just to take a page from the Black women that are centered into Joy My Freedom and think about the collective, the community that's allowed us to come together today to celebrate Tara and to Joy My Freedom, and then to also just highlight or center some of the hidden labor that has allowed this conference to take place. So first, just a note about our sponsors. The list is long, but I think it's important to name them. Sponsors for this symposium to Joy is the Carter G. Woodson Institute for African American and African Studies, the American Studies program here at UVA, the Department of History, the Department of Women, Gender, and Sexuality, the John L. Now III Center for Civil War History, and all of these are from the University of Virginia, the Dean of Arts and Sciences, the Page Barber Lecture Fund, the UVA Arts and the Office of the Provost and the Vice Provost for the Arts, and the President's Commission on Slavery and the University. We've also were incredibly fortunate to have some financial support from outside of the University of Virginia, from the UCLA Gary P. Nash Endowed Chair in U.S. History, from the UCLA Center for the Study of Women, and also from the Department of African American Studies at Yale University. So without these sponsors, this event could not have taken place. Two, I just want to acknowledge some of the individuals who helped to mobilize and engaged in the labor, right, to logistically make this conference possible. Debbie Best, who's the administrative assistant of the Carter G. Woodson Institute, Kathleen Miller, who's an administrative assistant in the Department of History, and also Molly Wilson, I don't know if she's here, but a graduate student who was absolutely instrumental in the planning of this symposium. And then also Joshua Perla, who's been our wonderful videographer and AV person in the back. Thank you so much. An immense thank you to all of the participants of the symposium for your brilliance, for your love, for your generosity, and a special thank you to Dr. Deborah McDowell and also Dr. Robin P.G. Kelley for your brilliance. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my co-conveners, Erica Armstrong Dunbar, who again could not join us today, Sarah Haley and Justine Hill Edwards. Your love and brilliance has made this an absolute joy to plan with you. You are an amazing group of Black female scholars. And so I'd like to reserve my final words of thanks for Tara, collective and individual. Tara, thank you for your magnificent and visionary work. Thank you for your support and engagement with an intergenerational cohort of scholars engaged in rigorous research. Thank you for the opportunity to celebrate the work, right? And also you a little bit, maybe collectively on your part, but to celebrate the work. I think, as Robin said, and also as my grandmother used to say, you have to give people their flowers while they're here, right? So that's what the celebration is about. And then finally, I just want to say thank you for your mentorship of me, for your generosity, but also for the ways in which, for me, I encountered To Joy My Freedom before I met you, almost a decade ago now. It was in a moment after I'd lost my grandmother, who, much like Jasmine, like your grandmother Lula, right, as depicted in the Washington Society, had migrated to the north, who actually engaged in laundry work, who worked in the homes of white people in a small town at Marshall, Michigan. And reading your book as I applied for graduate school really helped me to reconnect with her. It gave me an opportunity to imagine her life more fully beyond the strands and the stories that have been passed down directly from her and her children and her family and friends. But also I think for me, To Joy My Freedom has allowed me to imagine futures and possibilities for myself. And so for that, I would be forever grateful. And so please join me in thanking Dr. Tara W. Hunter.